What happens if you had to take a life? Unfortunately, but you had to take a life in order to save yours. And no one's there other than you and the person whose life you took, and they're dead, so they can't tell the other side what happened. And you get charged with murder. How do you prove to a judge or to a jury that this was self-defense? How do you show that this was a justifiable homicide so you don't spend the rest of your life in prison? Now, I'm Professor Lawson. For those that are new to the channel, this is criminal law class at Law Dog University, which is my university, but I actually teach criminal law at the William S. Richardson School of Law, University of Hawaii, here in Honolulu. And I practiced criminal law for 18 years. And so I say that to you to let you know that I know what I'm talking about, not just from the book sense, but from the practical experience. And the way that I find best in teaching you what self-defense is to use a case example. So today, you're going to learn self-defense in a state that does not have stand your ground law, which is a lot of states in the United States. This is part 2 of the series on self-defense in our criminal law class. Part 1, for my new viewers, is on my YouTube channel. Please subscribe and like this video. That's to everybody. But if you have not seen that video, you want to check it out because it goes into more detail about all of the elements of self-defense. I'm going to touch on them again, but briefly, because I want to get to the State of Hawaii versus Christopher Deedy. The State of Hawaii versus Christopher Deedy. Now, those in Hawaii, they know what I'm talking about. Some of you on the mainland may know also, but this was Hawaii's version of the George Zimmerman killing Travon Martin. And when I say that, because George Zimmerman was found not guilty by reason of self-defense in Florida, and so was Christopher Deedy, found not guilty. We're going to get into the facts of that case in just a few minutes, and I'm going to use that case to show you how the elements of self-defense should be applied and why I believe the prosecution intentionally threw the case. That's going to be my opinion. But as far as the law is concerned, that's just going to be the law. That's right. So I'm going to teach you the law. Like everybody else, I'm entitled to my opinion on why I believe the same with respect to Zimmerman and same with respect to Christopher Deedy. These two individuals got away with a homicide. All right, so let's get to it. So when is it justifiable to kill someone in self-defense? And I'm going to turn this a little bit so I can see it. All right, and so these are the elements. Now we're talking about, again, in stand your ground law, in states that have stand your ground, you don't need to retreat. That's the only difference. So Hawaii, it does not have stand your ground. Florida does, right? So what's the difference between that self-defense in Florida and stand your ground and in Hawaii? The only difference is in Florida, there's no duty to retreat. But that, to me, that's not a big difference. And I'll tell you why when we get through some of this stuff. All right, so you have to have necessity. What does that mean? I'm going to go real quick, and then we're going to talk about the Deedy case, because, again, I covered this stuff in class 1. But necessity is basically, it has to be imminent. In other words, when you use deadly force, the force coming at you, the threat coming at you has to be right now. What do you mean, Lawson? Well, let's say a person said, and you truly believe them, like, look, when that next time I see you on the street, the very next time I see you on the street, I'm killing you, right? And you know eventually you're going to see this person because you see them all the time. And so you're like, well, you know what? I'm not going to wait till I see you next time, and you kill him right now. Because you're saying it's inevitable that he was going to try to kill me. So this was self-defense. No. Inevitable doesn't mean imminent. It has to be right now. Right at the time that you pull that trigger, is there a threat of force coming at you that will support you using deadly force? Okay? It has to be imminent. Secondly, it has to be proportional. You see that? Right? That's disproportionate. Somebody kicks you in the shin. You can't stab them. And that's going to be important when we get to this Christopher Deedy case. Right? Somebody, remember those old Nerf baseball bats, they were foam, or, somebody smash you in there with a pillow and they're trying to hurt you. and then you stab them. That's not proportional. You can only use that much force to stop the force that's coming at you. And so if the force that's coming at you may be a knife or a gun, then you can use deadly force to stop it. And then once you stop it, right, you have to stop using force. So let's say somebody's coming at you with a knife or a gun, you shoot them, they fall down. Then you walk over them and shoot them again. No, no, no. Once they fell down and that force was stopped, then then you stop. If you go further and use excessive force, you've heard that term. It was excessive force. That means that you had a right initially, then it became excessive. Now you lose your right to say self-defense, and you talking to your lawyer about, can I get a manslaughter instead of a not guilty? All right. There has to be a reasonable belief. In other words, you can't just look at somebody and say, man, he looks scary, I'm going to shoot him. I think he's going to hurt me. He's looking at me in a way that makes me think he's about to cause me serious physical harm or even try to kill me. Right? That's not reasonable. It has to be a reasonable belief taken from your viewpoint, though. Right? So if you have somebody that has been beaten up before several times, etc., and when another person comes to strike them, and they have, right? So the jurors or the judge will look at your use of force. Would a reasonable person in your situation had used deadly force when they were presented with that threat? And that's the standard. Okay, I talk about more of that in the first video. I kind of want to get to this case here, and then we're going to apply what we learned from the first video as far as the elements are concerned of self-defense, and talk about it in this Deedy case, all right? Now, this is going to be important in the Deedy case. Remember the aggressor rule? I'm going to go over it again here. You can't start a fight. You can't be the initial aggressor. That's what that means. You can't start a fight. Let's say, hey, you're in a bar, you smack somebody upside the head and talk about their mama, right? And then they pull out a knife, and you pull out your gun and shoot them. And the cop comes and you say, hey, man, I smacked him, and I was talking about his mama. But, I mean, with fist, it was going to be a fist fight. He pulled out a knife. Now, I didn't have no choice at that time. I can't let him stab me. Can I? I mean, you telling me because I started the fight that I got to let him stab me, that I can't defend it? Well, yeah, you can shoot him, but you ain't going to be able to claim self-defense. Again, you back talking about manslaughter or some type of reckless harm or something. But you can't start a fight and provoke somebody to where they may start coming at you aggressively and then force you to kill them and then say that you acted in self-defense. Now, keep that in mind because that's going to be important. All right, so here we go. So you got State of Hawai versus Christopher Deedy. And this was a controversial case, man. I commented on this case as an expert when it was going on. The first trial happened in 2013, and so the news would call me up every time something would happen, and I would comment on it. I still believe today, like I did then, that that the prosecution messed the whole case up, and we'll get into that. But I believe even more today, after doing this research to bring you this class, I further delved into it. So far, Deedy has gotten away with a homicide, period. And again, I'll talk about more of my opinion later. Don't get angry right now. Again, we can agree to disagree. That's what law is about. You see Supreme Court judges all the time. You got a majority and a minority. The dissent, you've heard of that. Even if you ain't went to law school, you heard they dissented. They were in the majority. So you can have the same case and have different views, and that's what we do here at Law Dog University. And again, comment, even if you disagree with me. I tell my law students that all the time. Had a disagreements. That's debate. That's what our whole system is about. We do it in a respectful way. And again, if you comment and disagree with me, I'm not going to trash you or anything like that. We're here to learn. And I might be wrong with, you may think I'm wrong with respect to my opinion. And that's fine. But I would try not to be wrong with the law. No matter what side of this you're gonna fall on, I'm just tell you what the law is. All right. So Deedy was in Hawaii as part of the State Department's diplomatic security unit for the Asian Pacific Economic Conference, and that was scheduled through November of 2011, right, for like a week. So he's here. He met up with some friends. He's off duty, but he's carrying his firearm, his federally issued gun, and he goes. And now most states it's illegal to have a gun in a bar, even if you're an officer. Somehow in Hawaii that was fine. There's a reason why most states you can't do that. That's because alcohol and guns don't mix. And so he goes out with some friends, he being Deedy. And at the same time, Kolling Elderts is out with some of his friends. And they have a few drinks, and Kollin and his friends go down to McDonald's, and Deedy and his friends end up at McDonald's too. And the bartender who was working at the bar that Deedy was at that night testified at the trial that Deedy paid for 9 drinks at Coconut Willies. But the bartender also testified she couldn't tell how many of those drinks he drank as opposed to somebody else in his party. But nevertheless, he had been drinking. Now, they all get to McDonald's. They don't know each other. And so this is a guy right here who initially starts they get an argument with Kollin, who is, you can see him, he's like right here. And it's just Kollin's friend, right? And so Kollin and them are down there clowning. You know, it's 2 or 3 in the morning, whatever time, you know, early in the morning hours, they've been out. They're down there, you know, ordering, clowning. And something happens, and they start having words with this guy. But the guy testified that even he didn't feel threatened. So here's Deedy, right? Before I get to this slide. So Deedy comes over there and wants to play, you know, big cop. Now, he ain't been in Waikiki, to my knowledge, before. He's not on duty. Ain't nobody asked for the police to be called. No one said, I need help. Right? And so Deedy comes over there and starts up with Kolling Elderts and his friend. You know, what are y'all doing? And whatever, right? And at trial, Shane, Kollin's friend, testified that Deedy says to Kollin, do you want to get shot? Now, here's a man that's been drinking, ain't from here, ain't nobody asked for his help. Now, he wants to come over there and straighten Kollin and his friend out. And when Kollin says, hey, man, who are you? He's not in uniform. He has no authority, even if you know, period. And you know how young people are, and especially men with egos. It's like, hey, man, who you talking to? Right? Do you want to get shot? Right? And so it escalates. Now, here's the guy. You remember the guy? So here's a guy who Deedy claims he was. Deedy says, well, this guy was being bullied by Kollin and his friends, so I had to intervene. That guy came to court and testified, man, he didn't feel threatened at all. He says he didn't feel threatened. In fact, later on, you see him sitting down at a table over here, right? And so, you know, why are you coming and interfering? You being Deedy, right? Deedy claims he was trying to come to the aid of the customer who was bullied. All right, so let's say you were. You know, why would you say to a young man, do you want to get shot? Because keep in mind, Kollin and Shane, they were not armed. They weren't armed. And so remember that proportionality we were talking about? That even if somebody is trying to fight you, whatever, your force back has to be proportional. It can't be disproportionate. Hold on to that. Now, the resident agent in charge of the Diplomatic Security Service went on over activities prohibited under the State Department policy. So when he gets on the stand, he's being asked questions. What are your policies, agent, with respect to your agents coming here and drinking and carrying firearms? And what he says is, look, here's the policy. Consumption of any alcoholic beverage while armed or 6 hours prior to being armed or any time prior to being armed sufficient to impair an agent's judgment or ability to perform his or her duties is a violation of the policy. In other words, man, you ain't supposed to be drinking even according to your policy and carrying a gun. Why? Because tempers flare. Tempers flare. And so, so again, let's set it up. Now, this part is not my opinion. Here's a guy who essentially goes in, he being Deedy, has a few drinks, and then walks into a McDonald's in Waikiki that night and starts and jumps into an argument, right? That really, even by everybody, was not an argument. Anyway, so the jury is hung, right? A hung jury, so in criminal cases, unlike civil, in almost all the states, but here in Hawaii, all your jurors have to agree or disagree. If one juror says not guilty and the other 11 are saying guilty, that's a hung jury. If one juror is saying guilty and the other are not guilty, that's a hung jury, right? And so you can be tried again. It does not violate double jeopardy, but we can talk about that in another class because I plan on teaching free law classes for a long time. I love doing this stuff. All right, and so now, here's why that jury was hung, and here's why the prosecution threw the case. Deedy shot Kollin, who was unarmed. They start tussling. Deedy starts Kollin starts beating his ass, really, right? Fist fight. And where I'm from, man, you fight with your fist. Deedy shoots him. That's why I say, when we get back into that proportion, we get back into two things. One, who's the aggressor? Kollin hadn't said nothing to you. Kollin hadn't said nothing to Deedy. See, I feel like I want to talk to Deedy, so he really understands why it is that I still think that he got away with a homicide. But again, here's the law. Kollin hadn't said nothing to you. So again, the question is, who's the aggressor? The man who you claim you was trying to help out says he was not being bullied. Since you're not from here and doesn't understand the culture in the McDonald's at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, maybe you should have just backed up. There was other evidence where his Deedy's friends who was with him that night, the one lady said that I told him, let's just go. But see, that ego, I'm an agent, you're going to do what I say. And again, not one person said call the police. Not one person, when Kollin and his friends down there clowning, not one person's like, oh, you got to leave, sir. So when I break this case all the way down to its simplest form, it comes down to Agent Christopher Deedy's ego, right? It comes down to not being willing to take the high road and setting your pride aside from being hurt, not showing off in front of your friends that are with you. You heard the young lady testify that was with him. I kept asking him, let's just go, Christopher Deedy. Let's just leave. She wasn't saying, let's call the police and get this man arrested for the crimes he's committing, because he wasn't committing any crimes. Being loud and boisterous is not a crime, especially in Waikiki or any other. You got a hometown where there's restaurants that people go after the bars close down. They're loud, they're boisterous. It happens all the time. No one's getting killed there, right? And again, some of you may be saying, well, what's his professor? No, he's up there in that ivory tower teaching out the law books. But like I said, I practiced criminal law for 18 years, did a lot of homicides, and I was pretty good. And just here is a few of them that was quoted in the paper or printed in the paper. Here's one. Jury agrees shooting was self-defense. Mr. Cole's attorney, Kenneth Lawson, told 12 jurors in common pleas court that my client had to choose between murder charges and his own funeral. And it's better to be judged by 12, Mr. Lawson said, than carried by 6. Self-defense claim wins bar employee an acquittal in a killing. That was another case. And then another one. Jury believes self-defense, acquits father. 911 tapes key to court verdict. Right? Those are all not guilty in self-defense cases that I did. So, and I'm not saying that or showing you these things to say, look at me. What I'm saying to you is that when I say these things, that when I give my opinion, it's not just based on what I see in a legal book. Because what I tell my students, what you learn in this book and what goes on in court is two different things. I'm telling you from my experience and why I can give an opinion on why Christopher Deedy didn't meet the elements of self-defense, why I believe he got away with a homicide, and why I believe the prosecutors in this case threw the case. And just going back real quick, now we learned the elements. So what are you saying, Lawson? How, when you apply these elements of Deedy's case, look at it. Necessity. Was the force imminent? No. It's a fist fight. It takes you right back down to proportionality. Keep in mind, proportionality says you can only use that force necessary to stop the force that's coming at you. If you use too much force, that's what they call excessive force, then you lose the right to claim self-defense. In a fist fight, you are not in danger. For the most part, you're not in danger of great bodily harm. When I say great bodily harm, when the law says great bodily harm, they mean like getting crippled, maimed, close to death. Serious physical harm. There's a difference between serious physical harm and physical harm. A black eye is physical harm. Right? Getting a busted lip by getting punched in the mouth is physical harm. Serious physical harm is something that could actually almost cause you death. So unless you're in danger of serious physical harm or death, you cannot use deadly force. So what is he supposed to do, Lawson, if the guy's getting the best of him? He's got to take his ass whooping. I know some of you say, hey, what? That is really what the law is saying. That you might lose a fight, but it's not worth you taking a life. Right? Now, and then get down to, even a reasonable belief. How do you have a reasonable belief that Kollin is about to cause you serious physical harm or death? That's not reasonable. You're the one walking around asking him, does he want you to shoot him? He ain't got a gun, you do. It'd be more reasonable that it's more reasonable that Kollin believes you was trying to kill him. But anyway, getting back to it. And the aggressor rule. The aggressor rule. Right? Who was the aggressor? You can't start the fight in an aggressive manner. Grabbing the back. If you go to the YouTube and look up Christopher Deedy video, you'll see some of the surveillance footage from the McDonald's that night. And you'll see Deedy with his hand out here like this up against Kollin and his other hand on the gun that's in the small of his back. And he's already told him he's got the gun. Right? Now, so that's not reasonable. And then you look at here, we got a duty to retreat. Right? We got a duty to retreat in Hawaii. Remember the witness, let's just go. If you can, right, let's leave, but you stay. And you continue to ask for those reasons. That when I apply the facts of the Deedy case to those elements that you have to show for self-defense in states like Hawaii, where we don't have a stand your ground law, why Deedy doesn't meet those elements. In other words, why Christopher Deedy got away with the homicide. The court has since ruled, the Ninth Circuit Federal Court of Appeals has since ruled that Mr. Deedy cannot be retried for the manslaughter that the jury was hung on in the second trial. That if he does have a third trial, he can only be charged with an assault. And the reason why is because these prosecutors truly, Keith Conashiro and Jane Fuda, really messed up this case. And as a result of them not really going after Christopher Deedy for the manslaughter. Instead of saying we don't believe there is any evidence of manslaughter, this family doesn't get justice. And so that's all I have today for our class on self-defense in those states that do not have a stand your ground law. Again, please subscribe to my channel, like this video. If you have any areas of criminal law that may concern you or that you would like me to do a criminal law class on, the same kind that we do here at the law school, please put it in the comments section. I'll look at it and eventually do a class on it. But until then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I'll see you in class next week.